Okay. We're going to hold up for 1 second.
Now it's on. Now it's
Good. Yes. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's Fourth Space, and thank you for joining us for today's event, Behind the Scenes, Open Educational Resources, Pressbooks projects here at Concordia. And to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube. We're live from Fourth Space, and we are located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. Here at Fourth Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities that examine research questions, projects, things in development across the university. We're also running this event as a live stream Zoom meeting, so we welcome any comments, questions there via the chat. Those of you in the space, if you have questions, just let us know. We'll get a microphone over to you so everyone can hear. With that, it's very much my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rachel Harris, who is the scholarly publishing librarian here at Concordia University. She leads and coordinates the OER program, as well as the support, the growth, and the development of Concordia's open scholarship services. Rachel, thank you for coming in. Over to you.
wonderful. Thank you so much for that kind introduction and for the people at Fourth Space for helping to support events like this. So open educational resources are important because they enhance accessibility and affordability to learning. I'm now going to share my screen. Share. Presumably you can now see my screen. Okay, awesome. So we're currently celebrating Open Educational Week. OE Week 2024 is part of a global annual event, reoccurs every year, and it celebrates open education around the globe. At Concordia, we are celebrating OE month, so March as Open Education Month, because there's quite a lot happening here at Concordia. Behind the scenes, Pressbooks projects at Concordia kicks off Open Education Month here at Concordia. As we can see, behind the scenes is part of the broader Open Educational Week programming, as well as a series of events happening here at Concordia. So we will be getting the behind the scenes of 3 projects from the Department of Art History, a CREATE grant project, creating the modern intersections of art and society in the 19th century by Lauren Lerner and Karen Atanki. And from the Department of Journalism, a CREATE grant project, the digital magazine Open Textbook. And from the Center of Teaching and Learning, Active Learning, a short guidebook, and demystifying inclusive pedagogy. So very excited for these 3 projects. The objectives now are to demystify open textbooks and our publishing platform, Pressbooks, to gain insights from behind the scenes of these projects, to learn from colleagues, and to foster growth of OER here at Concordia. I am going to exit and go to the OER website. So if you're curious about what open educational resources are, they're teaching and learning materials. They can be in any medium, permit no-cost access, use, and adaptation and redistribution by others. Open textbooks being one of the more common types of OER. Part of what enables OER to be possible are the open licensing. So you can go find out more about the Creative Commons licensing that enables the adaptation and sharing. You can also discover some of our forthcoming and current open textbook projects on our site. And the grant period for new open textbook projects is now open as part of Open Educational Month. stop my screen share. So the first of our presenters is by CREATE grant recipient Christina Sanza and Andrea Hunter from the Department of Journalism, working on the digital magazine open textbook. And Andrea Hunter, who will be presenting for this project, is the chair of the Department of Journalism. Before coming to Concordia, she was a journalist for many years with CBC Radio, and I will pass it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here and very happy for the support we've had here at Concordia to create this textbook. I think what I'll do first is maybe just bring up the textbook and share that with you so you can have a look. It's working? Okay, great. So I skipped ahead to chapter 8. We have 10 chapters in this textbook so far. It's created with the idea that it'll be used in our capstone course digital magazine. Where students, as the name suggests, create a digital magazine that's put out there in the world. So it's really the culmination of all the skills they learn throughout the program in audiovisual, textual, all interactive, everything goes into that. But we realized we didn't have, there is no textbook really that addresses all these things for these students. So that was the inspiration behind this. And we also, as we were thinking about this, there was a couple issues. Number one is that journalism is constantly evolving and changing. So we needed, textbooks can go out of date pretty quickly in this field. So we needed something that would be able to change pretty quickly. So this was the inspiration, I think, behind wanting to take this on, is that it's so easy to update as we go along. And we also envision, as we got into it, I'm not sure if we thought about this at the beginning, but as we started working on it, we realized that this actually could be used across our entire program. So for instance, I teach audio to first-year students, and I'll be using the audio chapter in here, parts of it anyway, directly in those first-year classes. So it's going to be a use across our program. So this is what it looks like. So to demystify the process, I guess, I was trying to think of when we actually started this. It's been a few years. It was before the pandemic started that we started. So of course things, slowed down a little bit, but I think also it turned out to be a bigger project than we thought it would, which was kind of fun in a way because we're like, oh, we can do all sorts of things. It's been, I think, a lot of work, but a lot of good and fun work that's had us really think about what we're doing and really sort of pull apart the different ways that we teach journalism and think about where it could go. It's been really a group project, I think, most of our faculty has been involved, our staff members, full and part-time faculty as well. Christina Sanza, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, has really, evolved to take the lead on this and has been doing much of the sort of the organizing and writing and such. But all of us in the faculty have sort of chimed in on our specialities to help with the different chapters. So I'll kind of bring you through a bit. One thing we did do, so there's sort of different parts to it. There's the design, the organizing, and there's what's the content actually going to be. And then we worked with the designer too, to help us a bit with what it's going to look like. So here's chapter 8.1, for instance, videography. So just to give you kind of a sense of what we've done, every chapter starts with a bit of philosophy behind the certain section, and then it gets right into for instance, what makes a good video, story and angle, strong characters, that type of thing. Lots of interactive videos that we have throughout. I thought I had some photography up here, but I don't. But anyway, lots of things so students can kind of click on it and actually see what it is that we're talking about. If I switch screens, let's see if it's going to work for me. I wanted to show you also. I don't think it's going to work for me. I wanted to switch to one of the chapters where we have some interactive sort of quizzes as well. So students can actually test their knowledge throughout, and it'll sort of pop up whether you're on the right track or not. So I guess at first it seemed a bit daunting, but the hardest part I think really was at the beginning, was trying to figure out what we were going to do. And then once we kind of got into it and realized, okay, we can do this, all these separate chapters, and realized how interactive it can be. We can have quizzes within it, we can have audio, visual, everything. And that it could be used across different classes. That really, I was sold coming into it, but then I was like, oh, this is amazing as we kind of really got into it. So we're almost ready to launch, I think, for real. We keep putting it off because, stuff happens, but I think for real, it will be in a couple months ready to go and ready to use in September. I'm certainly looking at my audio classes and we'll be using it then. So it was a long process, but a good process, and really for us anyway, in terms of demystifying the process, we really needed a team behind it. We needed a lot of people. I actually haven't counted how many people in all were involved, but my guess is around 15 or so in sort of all the different, like, could you please look at this chapter? Could you please look at this chapter? And it's been also interesting throughout the time we started to now, journalism has evolved in some ways as well. So we've been able to go in and make shifts and changes. So I don't know, Rachel, if you wanted me to address anything else about the process and how it all works, but that's sort of the main summary behind it for me.
Yeah, I think that's great. Some wonderful things to highlight that you mentioned is the wonderful interdepartmental collaboration of professors working closely together for this one open textbook that every student through the program is going to have to interact with through their capstone project. And then, as you mentioned, in one of your courses, you're narrowing in on the audio part. So it's useful in this one course, the capstone one, but in other courses as well. And having professors really work together as part of a department, I think is a wonderful example of open educational community. And then as well with the interactive components, you showed us some of the videos. If you're able to go to the contents on the top sidebar bottom.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there we go.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Yes. Okay. Here we go. Okay. This is the fun part. It'll take a second. It's all fun, but this is the most fun part for me anyway. I was testing myself. So here we can all do a little quiz together. I know at first I was like, is this going to work? But we all actually really got into it. And okay, so here we go. I'll test the people here. You're writing a feature story on a renowned local chef who's unveiling a new restaurant in the coming weeks, and you discover an autobiography that he wrote several years ago, in addition to a dated profile piece by an alternate publication. Which one of these is the primary, which of these is a primary source? So both, the autobiography, the profile, neither. The answer is, check it. Yes, there we go. So you guessed the autobiography, you are right. And again, like this is something that, we start from the very beginning. So this is, something that will be used in our research classes and can be used in our first year classes. And also as a reminder as like students go through. So there's all these different quizzes that you can take. Is this what you wanted me to show?
Yeah,
I know. I love it. And it's also throughout the book, there's sort of different versions of it. There's some like sort of very introductory things, and then it gets like a little more intense. And I can, again, picture myself using it within my classes, like at different kind of levels, first, second, third year.
And so for the folks who are lucky enough to show up in this room, when you're out, when you're wandering out, we have a display computer and you can poke around and further explore some of those interactive features. Perhaps a question that I have is, with the departmental nature of this project and intradepartmental nature of this project and all the interactive components, if you were to imagine insights for some other department going through something like this, what might be some of those lessons learned insights?
I think what we've learned is that there needs to be a lead on each chapter first. You need to have a lead, or at the most 2 people, but usually a lead. And then you need a, anyway, the way we did it, we had somebody else then like read it over. We had somebody, a student working with us. Thank you very much for the support from the library to be able to hire students who like interviewed different people throughout the department to get their insight about what should be in these chapters. So that was kind of pulled together. So then we had a lead writer, and then it has been reviewed 2 or 3 times by different people that we've brought in. But yeah, we tried to joint write one through these 3 people, and the voices were very different. So it didn't really flow in the end, even though all the insight was super important to have in there. Yeah, have a lead, and then bring in people to take a look and to edit and to relook at it as you go along.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really useful insight.
It's something we discovered, by accident, that this is actually a better way to do it, is to make sure. Because at first we wanted to be, and we are, I think, collaborative. So the idea was everybody can have a piece of this. Let's all kind of edit and work on it together. But in the end, where we're approaching, hopefully, but of course, it's not the end. This can continue on and on, is that it's better to have sort of one person looking through. Yeah, but it's been great. And I hope other journalism schools across the country and out there in the world will find it useful, and that we'll get some interesting input as this expands.
Same. I think it will
so.
catch the eyes of
Yeah.
other journalism departments. It's such a wonderful project, and I'm looking forward to its launch.
Well, thank you again for your support through this. That has been, like, if anything else, it has been instrumental working with you and others at the library to make this happen.
Well, it's a pleasure and a beautifully designed project. And the theme of beautifully designed brings us to our next project. So the next presenter is going to be talking about the Department of Art History's Create Grant project titled Creating the Modern Intersections of Art and Society in the 19th Century by Lauren Lerner and Karen Antaki. We will be hearing from Elliot Mann, one of the students hired on this project. Elliot is a third-year undergraduate art history student set to graduate from Concordia in the spring, which is coming around the corner. He's currently proposing research oriented around surrealism and photographs of the human body. He enjoys creative nonfiction and dancing on the weekends.
I thought that was cute. I think it could be read out loud. So I was brought on by Professor Lerner in May of 2023 to help format and just kind of do more of the logistical end of this project. And I have slides on, so I'm kind of speaking on behalf of Professor Lerner here, but the project is called Creating the Modern, and it began as a curriculum of the course. A course that, kind of speaking as an art history student, is something you have to go through at some point in your art history career. It's 19th century vanguard paintings. So it's like the old masters. It's what we think of when we think of art history. And it was sort of first explained to me as this vulgarization of art history, or these kind of more complex ideas, because it is a survey course. And so what was put online is a very succinct explanation of sort of basics of art history. This is her original curriculum for the course that I believe Professor Lerner taught while she was still a teaching professor here at Concordia. So as you can see, there are 10 components that were put in chapters in the open resource textbook that just start from beginning of the 19th century and go up until the 20th century. So because it's an open resource, a lot of what was originally in the course was like photocopied textbooks or things like that. And there had to be a lot of changes when putting it online. Most of all, there are mostly primary sources of lecture of each of these like artists that are taken from, sorry, just 1 second. That are taken from primary sources and from master's theses from other students. So what the open textbook really does is it serves as this aggregate of all of this knowledge that's often obfuscated in art history, because in art history, like hiding behind our big terms like avant-garde and postmodern and all of this. So it's a great tool for just one spot where you can find a chronology that's very simplified of 19th century painting of this specific topic. And I was brought on originally to find images for the textbook, and images, which is really the core component of art history, is a lot more difficult than it may seem. They're all online, but it's not that obvious. It's just looking up a painting and finding it, because there's the question of resolution, there's the question of image rights. And really for an art history student, it can get pretty difficult nailing down, you know, some of more obscure paintings or everything like that. So just having it all online and in one spot was kind of a key goal, and organized, most importantly. So all proper citations, something that students can look at and then very easily be able to cite, and more or less copy paste a citation and have it be proper in, you know, Chicago Citation, which is Concordia's art history citation. So that was what I was brought on to do. And so I have in, you know, a folder somewhere about 1,500 of these paintings, all links to high resolution sources. Most of it is from Wikipedia, which is extremely helpful. Wikipedia is kind of an amazing resource in a way, where there are a lot of these high resolution photos of paintings that have been taken mostly by just people I've found who just go to these museums and take and upload them. And it's just very cool to have this all in one spot. But there are also paintings that aren't on Wikipedia and that are very, hidden behind museum websites and aren't so obvious to find. So just having this all in the textbook with all the writings our learner has done for her course is just very evident, and it's all made very clear, which I personally appreciate as someone who is a student in a domain which is very, maybe pretentious isn't the right word, but sort of verbose in a lot of ways. I find that in this textbook in particular is written in a way that is very comprehensible, not just to me, but to students who aren't art history, which should probably be a goal for an open resource textbook. It's something that, my friends in studio arcs can look at and can very easily understand how we got from Courbet to Picasso. So these are examples of other sources that are included in the open textbooks. There are YouTube videos, informative YouTube videos that have been made. There are master's theses from other students. And then there's collections of primary sources, which is, of course, very important for our history. But yeah, it's really just a great place to vulgarize, to understand these paintings in a very concise manner and written as if it was a course that you would take. Yeah, that was my experience working on it. I started in the summer, so this took a good amount of months to collect and then publish. And I know that it's the work of a lot of professors. Karen and Taki, equal measure to Lauren Lerner, has worked on this. There are other students other than me, like August Falone. And yeah, it's a team effort of just taking this base material of a course and putting it online and properly formatting it and making it very, very approachable. So I believe that's all for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Would it be possible to, I guess I can share my screen just to give folks a sneak preview of what it looks like. I'm gonna share my screen. Here we go. And then go into one of the chapters and we can see this beautiful open textbook filled with lots of images from the public domain that are circulating around the internet, which makes them really great sources for open textbook material. And then if one were to want to get a closer look, the view source brings people to the image. So in art history, it's really important to take a close look often at the image itself. So it's a wonderful example of a book that combines text image layout, but also a very image heavy book, and showing that that can be possible in Pressbooks and suitable for the study of visual arts. And yeah.
I should also probably mention that like this process of having art history images online is like, as I said, it's like integral to the process of art history. When I first got hired by Professor Lerner, I was in France, and the academic system is a little different there, but all the photos of paintings that we had access to were most of the time, crazily, photos that the professors had to take themselves, where they would walk to the museum and they would have their iPhones and they would take it and put it online. And it just, there's a, as we're moving more and more online, there's a level of literacy that I think needs to be developed when it comes to these art history courses. So this is like a great first step to just having everything in one place. And really, if the goal is to make art history open to all kinds of students, then this image process is probably the first step towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, you can see some of Elliot's work of the captions that you worked really hard on, and uploading all of those images into the Pressbooks. So from a student perspective, if you were to offer insights to other students working on these kinds of projects, what might that be?
Just stay organized is the main one. It's very easy to get lost with all of these photos. Monet has about 50 paintings that he all titled Haystacks in the exact same way. But of course, they're all hopelessly different from different years of his life. So having them just staying organized is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Anonymous is another common name for an art title. Wonderful. Thank you for those insights. I'm going to stop my share. So one of the things about Lerner and Karen Ataki's Creating the Modern book is that it's this wonderfully engaging resource with lots of images. The topic of engagement and learning and how to really make a classroom active and inclusive brings us to our next presenter. So the third presentation is by the Center of Teaching and Learning, Active Learning, a Short Guidebook, and Demystifying Inclusive Pedagogy. Ariel Harlap is leading the implementation of these CTL open guidebooks. Ariel is a multifaceted designer focused on community technology, education, and relational learning. They reflect on their practice through a justice-oriented lens. Ariel works as an instructional designer at the CTL, developing professional development opportunities and resources for and with faculty to support student flourishing. On to you, Ariel.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. Okay, let's see. I'm going to share screen. So I'm going to go a little bit behind the scenes of the history of Pressbooks at the Center for Teaching and Learning. So I started in September 2022, roughly. And one of the first big projects I was working on was revamping the Center for Teaching and Learning website. So this is sort of what it looked like before I started, thanks to the Web Archive Wayback Machine. And this is, there were some like very long resources, as you can see, like nested several layers down. And so it was a little challenging to navigate. And that's when I went looking for alternatives. What are other tools that we can use that are institutionally supported? And so I found Pressbooks and got in touch with Rachel. And we started working on how can I bring all of this content over into Pressbooks. So I started with the books for which there was already content existing. And the active learning Pressbooks is about basically learning by doing. So there's sets of techniques and activities that allow classroom teaching to be more student-centered and more hands-on. And as you can see, it took a very long time to get this book published. I also started around the same time working on this course design book. So this is basically using backwards design, which is four different parts, looking at learning outcomes, planning assessments based on the learning outcomes, planning instructional activities, and then designing for course alignment among those three components. And that also existed elsewhere, and so it was mostly about bringing the content over. So there's just like a few little technical things that happened along the way. I was getting UJA videos to be embedded properly. There's another milestone here of 360-degree classrooms. Thank you, Francisco, for helping with that. And then roughly in August, almost a year later, Naj Sumar, instructional designer on inclusive pedagogies, started working at the center and wanted to create this resource that's a little more than just a basic intro, but a very practical approach to thinking about inclusive pedagogies. And that went really fast. That was just like a couple weeks. And one of the big things that took time was just getting everyone to agree on us being able to use this platform for our website content. So that was both internally at the center and also with University Communication Services. And basically once I got those yeses, then it was much faster. As you can see, the later books, Blended Learning, which also was a series of maybe 5 or 6 pages on the website, just took about a month to bring over into Pressbooks. So Blended Learning is about basically shifting a bunch of your course time, your synchronous course time, into asynchronous out of the classroom learning time. And then coming up, hopefully, sometime before the end of April will be a textbook on education for sustainability. So resources for teaching sustainability, or embedding sustainability in your courses. And then, Josephine, who I think is with us, is going to be leading this. This probably will be a Pressbook, teaching assistant handbook written in collaboration with Grad Pro Skills. I can maybe just do a quick demo of some of these components. So this one is the course design Pressbook. And so we also used H5P activities, just like the journalism folks. So here is the documentation tool that lets you sort of guides you through the reflection once you've read, for example, and looked at the content for learning outcomes. Then this will guide you through drafting your learning outcomes, assessing whether they meet the necessary criteria to be effective, and then you can also save it to have a trace of your thinking. Okay, here is the Demystifying Inclusive Pedagogy Pressbook, and this one was a bit challenging because there's like really short tips. I'm thinking I will see about adding a little image icon like the journalism textbook did on the side. There's short tips with context for the impact this can have. And then often there's longer examples. So the idea is that you can look around across the three topics: course design, classroom environment, course delivery, and then drill down into a narrower focus, and then scan the tips and go deeper when you want to. Here is the active learning. I'm going to highlight here these really neat 360 videos of the classrooms. So these are flexible classrooms or active learning classrooms. And I wanted to show what they look like at Concordia. So there's a bunch of them on campus. IT services did this amazing work of creating the 360 videos, 360 images, and then it was just a question of embedding them in the Pressbooks. I think that's, I guess I was just going to say, for the H5P activities, there's like a bunch of different types you can use if you want to create more interaction in your Pressbooks, and you can look through and figure out like which one makes sense for your use case. So that's pretty much what I had to share.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So just as the journalism department's project is going to be useful internally within Concordia, but also for journalism departments elsewhere, your projects are going to be useful internally within Concordia for faculty members seeking inspiration, but also for other centers of teaching and learning who might want to take inspiration and not constantly reinvent the wheel. So it's inspiring to see those Creative Commons licenses around on your work. So perhaps the question, since many folks want engaging and active learning in their classroom, if one were to use Pressbooks and to make it engaging and an experience for active learning, what top insights might you have for the Concordia community of faculty members thinking about open textbook projects?
What comes to mind is this amazing Pressbook. I forget which university started it. It's called Liberating Learners. And it was a Pressbook that was created basically through a classroom of students. So this would be a great way of involving students in the use of Pressbooks, but could also be a way of having students demonstrate their mastery of some content, while also creating an artifact that they can be proud of.
Awesome. And I should mention that we have kind of two streams within our OER program, the open textbooks through the Library Services Fund, which are grants, and then these open guidebooks. We're doing some within the library to support these projects, but also our wonderful collaborators over at the CTL experimenting with Pressbooks and launching open guidebooks to support teaching and learning, which is all really in the spirit of open education. So I'm gonna jump soon to the room to see if you have questions. But before I do that, I'm gonna give Elliot and Ariel the chance to perhaps ask each other a question before I throw it to the room. I'll give you a second to think. And Ariel has kindly put the Liberated Learners book that they mentioned into the chat.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering what your thoughts are on the Google Arts and Culture site. If you're familiar with it.
Yes. Actually, nowadays I'm familiar with every online photo hosting site, but Google Arts and Culture, it's just wrong a lot of the times that I've found, unfortunately. But it's one of these sites, like also like Wikipedia Commons, which is like a great initiative, and gets it right more times than it gets it wrong, and it's just good. It's just good to have these host sites, as long as one doesn't have the sort of monopoly. Like oftentimes I would Google a painting and then Google Arts would come up and it would just be the wrong painting, for example, and I would have to dig further to get to the right one. So sometimes it could clog things, but for the most part, it's good.
Is one of the applications the one where you can throw in an image? Basically, it does a reverse image search and it does the 7 degrees of separation. So you start with a vase and then maybe you're ending up with flowers, but it's through it mimics formal analysis in a way, forcing one to think about what are the visual qualities that make this line of images similar and different.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It actually, like the way I read images is different now, but there are like those applications, those sites, those reverse image searches as well. But yeah, oftentimes I would find myself just describing the painting into the Google search, and a lot of errors get reproduced. So it gets names wrong once on Wikipedia, and then it's wrong everywhere, and you would have to go a lot further to find the proper image.
Very interesting. So do you have a question for Ariel, or shall I throw it to
I think so.
the room? Okay, if you have one, just let me know. So I will now open the floor to either folks who are in the Zoom or in the room.
You can just raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you if you're in the room. In the chat, feel free, if you're visiting by Zoom, to just put your question in the chat.
I like that you're being very outward looking and thinking about other universities, other departments, journalism departments, art history departments, and how they might adopt these OER resources. So I was also thinking, while you were talking about Concordia's efforts, are there any other programs that you're aware of at other universities that you would want to plug and encourage those authors?
To plug, well, I think that the work in the OER world is really flourishing in Quebec. So there's a growth of open educational interest in the Francophone side. So that really deserves plugging. One of the interesting things about OER being developed in, say, with UBC, BC campus, the Maritime provinces, the Prairie provinces, is that there's a lot of OER that exist in English because of the permission granted that people can adapt these things. This is a wonderful opportunity to adapt OER into the French language, which is part of the spirit of sharing, and I think very apt within our current climate of collaboration between English and Francophone institutions. So definitely work within the universities like Université Laval, Fabrique Rel, for example. They definitely deserve a shout out. Later on during Open Education Week at the University of Alberta, there's a series of talks. One of the students working with me, Sarah Fackery, is going to be talking about OER outreach from a student perspective as part of a talk series there. So that's worth plugging as well. And then there's some interesting work being done to help faculty members think about how to integrate their OER work for tenure and promotion, so it counts within that. So it's called OER Doers. That's worth looking up as well. That was developed through BC Campus.
Do we have any other questions?
You worked too hard for that one. I guess I have a bit of interest because I'm noticing like a lot of the OER resources are, with the exception maybe of the art ones, and I got here late and I am not an expert, I am just a fan, but very, very text heavy. I think most people make it into the world, or the academic world anyway, with feeling capable at creating textual resources. But in some casual conversations I've had in the sciences, I've heard that a roadblock is creating diagrams and images. And I think it was interesting to hear the struggles just of finding images that already exist in the public domain. So what are some tools, what are some things that can be done to encourage image and diagram creation to support OER? That's just a personal interest when I asked someone I know quite well why they weren't working on OER resources.
So for diagrams, there's a plugin for LaTeX in Pressbooks, which tell us more.
I'm going to be more specific. Sorry, I was trying to be general. The human we're talking about is my mother. It's nice to talk to family because you can be really honest and just be like, why aren't you doing this? Whereas, other people, you have to like ease them into that scenario. And she teaches biology. So that was specifically brought up as a big thing. So like diagram of a cell, which is, I understand sometimes in a technical nature, you got the arrows and the boxes and the like data visualization kind of tools are going well. But I think some of those like really quite complex diagrams with, shapes inside of shapes and lots of colors, it did seem, I was like, wow, I haven't thought about this. I bet Rachel's thought about it.
I'm gonna try to do a share screen and get back to you in 2 seconds as other folks think about how they might answer. So integrating images in Pressbooks or other forms of OER.
Yeah, I can speak on it a little. So Pressbooks is sort of like more or less complicated, but I think that an interesting part of it with images, at the very least, is formatting it, and it can be very difficult, and it can often be, there's like a learning curve at least, because art historians usually are not coders by profession, and it's sort of a different skill set, and it's like your mother said, it's like very daunting, and I know it was daunting for Professor Lauren Lerner. So I think yeah, it's harder than it may seem, and it requires a base knowledge of how images fit into the web in general through code and stuff.
So to add to that, image searching and OER searching by extension, there are biology textbooks that are open that do exist out there. And what I'm going to do is one of the projects that we're working on in-house is a guidebook that draws inspiration from the projects that we support. I'm going to do a share screen. And so this is a relatively complex interactive diagram where you can see my screen. Yeah, you can. You can find out what anatomical features are being pointed to. And then if I go down, so what we're showing here are examples of interactivity within Pressbooks, and we have all the sources here. So I think the one that you're looking at, the image hotspots, anatomical variation, and Australian and New Zealand context. So I can go right to the source and explore this. So I'd be curious for your mother's opinion, and I'd be happy to send along more resources if she's possibly considering an open textbook or an OER. And that goes out to faculty members here at Concordia. If you're thinking about an OER and you're wondering what might work in my discipline, happy to chat with you. My email address is rachel.harris@concordia.ca. Ariel, do you have anything to add to the question of finding and integrating images?
Yeah, I think it's just extra work, I guess, if you want to make it accessible.
Yeah.
Also, there's ideally the image caption or the alt text if the image caption isn't descriptive enough. So if you're going to write the text anyway, maybe you can just get away with writing the text if you don't have access to an illustrator. Yeah, and you can always do that later. I haven't really thought about using AI because I still have mixed feelings about it, but I suppose you could, if you can generate an image description, then you could plug that in to an image generator and see if you get something that's good enough and then touch it up.
Oh, that's really interesting. The thought of you experimenting with AI to see what it would do for alt text. And on the topic of alt text, with the image heavy open textbook that is creating the modern, one of the things that Elliot did was a lot of alt text. Do you have some insights on creating alt text, since you did a lot of it?
I mean, I think AI is probably like that's a good use for images in general. For art history, it wouldn't work because visual descriptions of paintings is already so political when it comes to art history, and you have to be very careful. And so really, when you write art text for paintings, you have to just think about the person reading it and just try to describe things soberly. And so I did that with all these images. And yeah, you just sort of have to be very head on about it, and not get distracted with usual art history ideas, not talk about anything else except for what you literally see.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
I'd
sense.
be curious to see what AI would do with like a Monet painting though.
But that sounds like a research project. Are there other questions?
We're not seeing any questions on Zoom.
Okay, we'll give it one more second, just in case. If you had a question for Ariel.
I mean, I don't know if this is a question for you in particular, but it's probably the most interesting thing about open resources in general is like the question of accessibility. I find a lot of the museums in Montreal and elsewhere very inaccessible. The museum I worked for did not have a wheelchair ramp for the 2 years that I worked there. And just having open resources like this seems like a great equalizer in this measure. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that. Or...
Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, at the most basic level, the open textbook is like a cost saving, which can be significant for students. So there's, yeah, I mean, there's multiple, I'm not an expert on accessibility, but there's definitely multiple components. There's like accessibility from like the variation in abilities perspective, like can I see the image or do I need an alt text to see the image? But then there's also, I guess, like just how much more comprehensible and easy to edit textbook can be. And then it can be evolving over time based on the feedback from students of, I don't understand this bit. And so then, faculty can go in and edit it, or there's also the element of like localizing it and making it accessible in that sense, and that it's comprehensible from a local context of, okay, this example about, I don't know, calculating distances makes sense because it is grounded in my neighborhood as opposed to, about space travel, which I have no connection to, say. So that's what comes to mind.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense when trying to be as fostering as possible within teaching and learning to broaden what is meant by accessibility, whether it's financial or there's cultural barriers or the need to localize, and thinking about who are we including within what is being taught. I think that's an excellent point. And there appears to be something in the chat. So yes, so Josephine mentions Pressbooks are also exportable in many different formats. So if someone, for example, with the image heavy book wanted to see the images online, but really wanted to physically read and note, or to have the text to speech function so you could hear at the same time, the different formats enhance the experience of learning. So I'm going to do one last screen share. Again, we're participating in Open Education Week and Open Education Month. The application period for open textbook grants is now open, as you can see, and the call will be in French as well as in English. Going back to the OER site, if you're curious about OER, look up concordia.ca, library OER. And then other events around the corner, hunting for open educational resources suited to your discipline, especially for undergrads. There will be prizes for the first 4 students who attend the full workshop. The OER Discovery Minute, there will be refreshments and games, and that'll be a lot of fun. And so I hope to see you throughout Open Education Month. Thank you so much to our speakers, to the Department of Journalism, to Art History, to students, and the Center of Teaching and Learning. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Ariel. And thank you to Fourth Space and to all of those who attended.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks to everyone coming in today, both online and in the space for this conversation. Just gonna let you know that we'll be closing up the Zoom and the live stream now, but a reminder that it remains available on our YouTube channel if you'd like to revisit it there. And thanks again for coming in. We'll hope to see you again soon. Have a great afternoon, evening, wherever we're at.